The Blaze Radio Network. On demand. Glenn Beck.
The Blaze Radio Network.
Tim Ballard is here. Tim's world is a little upside down, wouldn't you say?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Tim Ballard is the founder and CEO of Operation Underground Railroad. He serves as OUR's Jump Team Commander for Rescue Operations. He has spent over a decade working as a special agent for the Department of Homeland Security. He was assigned to the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, deployed undercover, worked for the U.S. Child Sex Tourism Jump Team. He has dedicated his life now to saving children and saving slaves all around the world. We have also just named him the chairman of the Nazarene Fund. And so now his team and our team are working together to not only finish what we started in Syria and Iraq, where he's got some amazing news for us, but also to expand now into Africa, Northern Africa in particular. So we are going to take this on globally. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So tell me what this means for the Nazarene Fund. Where's the Nazarene Fund? Where are we going?
I think you said it's global now, with still an emphasis on the Middle East and with an emphasis on the Christian communities there that are continuously being persecuted in different ways. It doesn't matter if, for example, we know that the Nazarene Fund did an amazing job moving thousands of people and families out as ISIS was rolling in. But not all of them got out. And even though ISIS has been pushed out of many of those regions, they took some of those people with them. Thousands of those people, children, are stuck with them.
We just rescued a 3-year-old girl who was used as a sex slave.
That's right.
2 weeks ago. Rescued a 3-year-old girl who's used as a sex slave. And she was a toy because she was a Christian.
That's right. These kids, if they're Christian, they are seen as animals, as subhumans, and they'll do anything they want to them. And they are sex slaves. And there's thousands of these kids, these Christian and Yazidi kids who are stuck, and we are going in and getting them out.
And the wives and the mothers are there, and many times the moms have to watch their children be abused, and their children have to watch mom being abused.
It's the most
several times a day.
The most horrifying thing we could dream up.
So, you say that, and then I'm gonna turn the corner into something that is even darker than that. I think maybe not, because these people die right away. But we were alerted about a year ago at the Nazarene Fund, and we were presented evidence that there is organ trafficking going on, that one way for the radicals to make money is to capture Christians and harvest them for organs. And we couldn't believe it. We were presented with videotape that is just horrifying. Your team and our team went and verified the location that this did happen at this location. We couldn't find any of the people. Can you tell us a little bit about the organ harvesting thing that's now happening?
It is horrifying. Like you said, I didn't think things could get darker than sex slavery, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but This is its own kind of unique darkness. And these guys need to make money. They are trying to make money, and they'll exploit and do anything they can. And it is a big market to get organs, particularly, like pediatric hearts are very hard to come by. And they have these kids, and they say, we're going to do it. And they're doing it. We can't reveal details, but we have guys on the ground right now.
Can you talk about what's going to happen in January?
We will have a report in January that we're working on right now with the intel that we're getting that will, I think, will blow your mind. What's going on? We're tapping into things that we didn't. We're surprised by. We knew it existed. We didn't think it was this big. But this is a very real market, and this is we're getting the intel, working with the authorities.
Will you, at that time, or not? Will you be able to mention the names of the countries that are involved, or do we have to keep that quiet?
Right now, it has to be quiet. By end of January, we'll make a determination of what we can show. But we're planning footage. We're planning to show your audience footage of what this is and what is really happening.
And the reason why we wouldn't tell you what countries are involved is because we would want to be able to go in and infiltrate and shut this down. But you would be shocked you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked if it turns out to be accurate. Does it look like it's turning out?
It looks like it's very accurate. Yes.
Any idea how many people are involved in this? I mean, how many do they just go and buy these kids on the open market, or they just how many are?
So we estimate about 6,000 people, a lot of kids that did not make it out, that ISIS and or other criminal organizations in the region got a hold of. And these are the ones we're looking for, and these are the ones that are currently being threatened, to be sold in the organ harvesting market or the sex slavery market. So we're talking, it's in the thousands of people who are stuck. These Christian minorities, these Yazidi minority groups, and so there's so much money to be made there for these dark people.
So, Tim, one of the things that I've always loved about Operation Underground Railroad is that you don't just go get them. The aftercare is so important. You're not going to be able. When we were in Mexico, the things that these women told me that they had gone through for a decade, there is no way to heal on your own. And as I talked to them in one of the safe houses, in one of the places that you fund that is, doing rehabilitation, doing counseling, getting them back into school, it is totally transforming these people. How are we doing in the Middle East on these children that were given as gifts to people, and after they watched possibly their mom, but definitely their dad be beheaded for Christ?
The aftercare part in the Middle East is just like with OUR, same thing with Nazarene Fund. It is paramount. We have amazing partners. I know you've met a lot of those partners already. It's a different kind of dynamic where aftercare is not seen as a culturally accepted thing in those regions, which is so sad. So a lot of our aftercare has to be almost secretive. So I saw a video from the Nazarene Fund where we had just captured, I don't know if you saw this one, we had just captured a woman, and she was out in the middle of nowhere on this road where we made the transfer to her family. Yes, yeah.
Do you see this one?
Yes.
And you saw the women just grab onto her, and she just broke down, and they were all, but it was only women really that were there to meet her. And I thought, what happens in that culture to these women who were raped? I mean, can they get back?
They can. And we have to be creative. That's the thing with that part of the restoration. We have a girl we're helping right now. She was passed around at least to 18 different ISIS operators who each of them raped her. 15 years old. She ended up pregnant. We got her out, got her back, and there was one family member that said, "We'll take you, but not that baby." And so then her family rejected her because she was pregnant with an ISIS baby. And so we got creative and found a different solution that we can't reveal. And that's what it is. It's about being creative on the ground. Our guys on the ground are just unbelievable. They're so connected. They're foreign nationals. They know the culture. They know the whole dynamic there. So we're able to be creative and get these kids the care they need in the culture that they live in.
These are really brave Christians, and one Jew that I know of that are, I mean, they're caught doing this, and we've already lost 2 people.
That's right.
On our jump team over in the Middle East. They were captured by ISIS and killed by ISIS, trying to rescue, going to go back in and rescue more. These guys are remarkable and marked for death if their identities are.
These guys, I work with them. They are willing to die. They are willing to die to liberate these persecuted people. And it's just an honor for me to even stand in the same room and meet with these people who no one will ever know, and their faces will never be seen by anybody.
We put when we made the announcement that we were partnering with Tim and he was going to be the new CEO, we did so because he has connections, governmental connections all over the world, and we have watched his organization, and we feel that time is of the essence in the Middle East. And so we put a goal together of raising in the next 12 months $25 million. $25 million is a lot of money, but as we have seen with the Nazarene Fund, it can go a long, long way. What does the time look like, and what are we up against?
Well, the window's small. I mean, we've talked about this. Things change so fast, Even
though ISIS is gone, people don't understand. Now Iran is there. Exactly.
There's a vacuum always, and someone fills it. And when they fill it, the Christians are always the target. It doesn't matter who comes in. They're always the target. They always need us to support. They need us to rescue, to restore, to rebuild. And that's what we're here to do. And it's not just the people. That's the most important part, but the heritage. I mean, this is Christian history that ISIS are trying to destroy. And these
I was just talking to Rudy, and he said that we're part of our new goal is, as we're doing all this, to document all of the relics and everything else, so we know and have documented footage and coverage of everything, so we know exactly what it was and where it was in case it's destroyed.
Absolutely. Like, for example, there's a prophet in the Old Testament, Nahum, who in Al-Qash has his tomb, and ISIS was trying to destroy it. This brave priest took the bones of this Old Testament prophet and hid it in the desert. And these are the things we're working on, too, to help restore all this now that ISIS is gone and they've tried to destroy the Christian narrative, acting as though it never happened. Well, that's part of this. Some of these people want to go back to their Christian communities, and we're going to help them, those who want to go back, to bring them back into safety and help rebuild. This is an important story. This story touches all of us, and we can't let it fall off the tracks.
This is something that I believe you will absolutely be blessed for if you participate, and participating can just mean prayer power, prayer coverage. Boy, these guys need the prayer coverage, the prayers for inspiration on where to go, where to turn. Been with them where it's like, no, we're not supposed to move forward. We have to turn around and go another direction with just on promptings. And it has saved lives and freed people. But so it can go from there to, $5 a month. Abraham Lincoln is on the $5 bill, the ultimate abolitionist. Maybe Ben Franklin was probably a bigger abolitionist. So if you have a Franklin or a Lincoln, but you could make a monthly donation to the Nazarene Fund, the NazareneFund.org, the NazareneFund.org, and let's do some good together. Tim, thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Glenn Beck.
The Blaze Radio Network.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and I hope you had a good weekend. There's so much to talk to you about, from Michael Flynn to more of the fevered articles with regard to our president, to Mr. Mueller, to the latest, a pediatric endocrinologist writes that you should no longer, from a sophisticated hospital, writes that we should no longer say when a child is born, it's a boy, it's a girl, because we don't want to burden children with a gender identity. These people reconfirm for me the brilliance of the quote that is attributed to G.K. Chesterton: when people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything. We are living in an unprecedented age of stupidity, concentrated overwhelmingly among the secular well-educated. They tend to be the stupidest people in our society. And that pediatric endocrinologist is a good example. Do not announce it's a boy or a girl, because we don't want to burden the child with a gender identity. It is a combination of stupid, unscientific, and sick. Michael Flynn, my heart goes out to this man. Michael Flynn has served this country so beautifully. He had some of the highest positions in the American military and in our intelligence. and he has been hounded out of office here by Mr. Mueller and by the Democrats over doing essentially nothing. Yes, he did lie to the FBI, when, by the way, I still have no idea why he did. I would like to have him on one day and say, why didn't you just say the truth? You did nothing wrong. You did absolutely nothing wrong. And his meetings, in any event, that we're talking about took place after the election. You realize that nothing here whatsoever, nothing has to do with collusion in helping elect Donald Trump. The meetings that we're talking about were after being elected, a perfectly normal time for people to reach out in making their new administration, to quietly reach out to foreign leaders so that they come into office with a greater knowledge of whom they have to deal with, and that's it. Barack Obama did it. Everybody does it. You don't do it publicly because you're still not president, so you do it privately. Pleaded guilty Friday to lying to the FBI about his contacts with the Russian ambassador, which again, I remind you, took place after the election. So all of this reporting, all of it is fraudulent. Oh, this is the beginning of the end for the Trump administration. This is the beginning of the end of any belief that there wasn't collusion, but it has nothing to do with collusion. Here is his statement. After over 33 years of military service to our country, including nearly 5 years in combat away from my family, and then my decision to continue to serve the United States, has been extraordinarily painful to endure these many months of false accusations of, quote, treason. Who's accused him of treason? Oh, God, is that... It's so immoral. And other outrageous acts. Such false accusations are contrary to everything I have ever done and stood for. But I recognize that the actions I acknowledged in court today were wrong, and through my faith in God, I am working to set things right. My guilty plea and agreement to cooperate with the special counsel's office reflect the decision I made in the best interests of my family and of our country. I accept full responsibility for my actions. So sounds like the sort of statement you would wring out of somebody in the Soviet Union, in the late Soviet Union. The whole thing is fraud. Morally, it's a moral fraud. It's a factual fraud. The whole Mueller investigation. One of his deputies apparently was fired in the summer because he's tweeting out anti-Trump emails. I mean, just to give you an idea of what is involved here. Mueller removed top agent in Russia inquiry over possible anti-Trump text. That's a New York Times headline. The agent Peter Strzok, you pronounce this correctly, you're good, S-T-R-Z-O-K, is considered one of the most experienced and trusted FBI counterintelligence investigators. But he was reassigned this summer from Mr. Mueller's investigation to the FBI's Human Resources Department, where he has been stationed since. The people briefed on the case said the transfer followed the discovery of text messages in which Mr. Strzok to news events like a presidential debate in ways that could appear critical of Mr. Trump. I'm sure they could appear. I love that. Well, the whole Mueller team is anti-Trump, including Mueller. It's a tough time in America. The make-believe world in which the media live, that prompted a woman to write a piece in the Federalist. And it is, I think it's an important piece. It's a woman who immigrated here from India. And she writes about, let me give you the headline here. There it is. I'm a liberal, and I agree with Sean Hannity that American journalism is dead. I'm a liberal Democrat who didn't realize for a long time that our mainstream media is biased. For years, I consumed news and commentary from my favorite media sites uncritically, CNN, MSNBC, The New York Times. From time to time, I watched Fox News to see what, quote, the other side was saying. I lived in a kind of information bubble, but like most bubble dwellers, I didn't know I was living in one. Ironically, the 2016 election opened my eyes to this Truman Show-like media universe we've all been inhabiting. And then she goes on to explain how she came to realize during the coverage of Hillary Clinton how the press was simply in there to bat for her. That's what it was. So she ends it, it's not just our politics that is broken. Our media is broken too, and hopelessly. The bias used to be hidden, but now it is open, glaring, and shameless. Our media outlets have become very tribal and are openly rooting for or against the party and politician of their choice. Truth, fairness, honesty, justice, and journalistic principles be damned. I didn't go to a fancy journalism school and don't even have a journalism degree, but I know enough to realize that what is happening is bad, and that when the media self-divide into rabidly partisan camps, citizens suffer and democracy suffers. When Sean Hannity says journalism has died in America, I agree with him. Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. This weekend, I was in Washington, D.C. I'm back in New York City now, back in L.A. tomorrow. My wife and I stayed at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, and I have to tell you, I've stayed at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hotels in my life, maybe 1,000. Yeah, I'm sure I've stayed at 1,000 hotels now that I think of it. I don't recall a better hotel in my life, and the service was beyond belief. I couldn't, the service was just, it was staggering. And the whole experience was wonderful, which I don't normally think about in a hotel, aside from it being truly beautiful, but not gaudy, just beautiful and regal. Anyway, we're having a dinner there over the weekend, and the waiter, one of our waiters, I think the primary waiter, there were a number of people helping serve, but the primary waiter was a black man. I would say, I don't know, how old was he? I would say 40? Younger? 35? All right, 35 to 40. Anyway, so we asked him, do you get any flack from friends or relatives for working at a Trump hotel? He said, no, not at all. They understand I make a living. And we did not ask him anything else with regard to Donald Trump. And then he volunteered, said, he comes by every so often. He is a really, really nice guy. He makes sure to talk to every one of us. He's concerned. He's just a good guy. This is the hater. I guess he puts on an act of being a nice guy. But the left-wing media, they really see through it. They see that he's a white supremacist. He's a white supremacist who treats blacks well. Isn't that something? It's a new type of white supremacist. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show, 1-8-PRAGER-776. I was telling you about this, the black waiter. Actually, my wife tells me that he was more a millennial than even in his mid or upper 30s. Okay, I believe her. And he totally volunteered. He had no reason to say. We did not ask, did you ever meet the president? Did you ever meet Trump? Do you have any thoughts on Trump? We didn't ask any. All we asked was, do you get any flack from friends or relatives about working at the Trump hotel? So he could have simply said what he did. No flack at all. People understand I got to make a living. End of issue. He then volunteered. Anyway, I've met Mr. Trump, and he's terrific. He just treats everybody so wonderfully. Anybody ever say about Hillary Clinton she treats everybody wonderfully? Did you ever hear how the Secret Service people who have known her have reported her? Look, it's my theory in any event that by and large, the further left you go, the meaner people are. So it doesn't surprise me if that were to be true. I don't know it to be true. Never met her. Have no interest in meeting her. But it wouldn't surprise me in light of the meanness issue. It's just a fact. That's not even an opinion, that people get meaner the further left they are. I always give you the simple example of who cuts off relations with family members and refuses to go to a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner. The Trump voting relative or the anti-Trump voting relative? Okay, the New York Times itself reported last year at Thanksgiving time, it was overwhelmingly the anti-Trump relative who cut off relations and wouldn't go for the first time in decades for Christmas or Thanksgiving to a Trump voting relative. How many kids stopped talking to parents because they voted for Hillary Clinton? It's probably close to zero. How many kids, I'm talking adult kids, have stopped talking to parents because they voted for Donald Trump? I don't have a number, but I suspect it's in the tens of thousands. That's how bad it is. Anyway, it was very touching to hear him go on and on about how nice the president was, and I believe it. Here's a little thought for you, my friends. I should repeat this almost every day until people memorize it. These charges of misogyny made against the president because of the private comment he made on the Access Hollywood tape about if you're rich and famous and powerful or whatever it was, women let you grope them. Okay, didn't say he did it. Didn't say he did it against their will. If he did it, it was women let you. Okay? But that is a typical basis for calling him a misogynist, a woman hater. And all of these examples of male sexual harassment of females, these are all examples of misogyny, even though the vast majority of them are done by feminist men, big activists for the feminist causes. Nevertheless, they're really misogynists. Shows you the immaturity of people making these charges. Immaturity is a characteristic of all of the left. Immature thinking or immature character or both. My friends, one of the most prominent conductors in the world, James Levine of the Metropolitan Opera, the Boston Symphony. I know classical music well, and I can tell you he's one of the revered names. And he is gay, and it's always been known as gay. And now 3 men have come forward and said that when he was in his late 20s, he molested them when they were 17 and 16 years of age. And the descriptions are quite sad and even a little scary. I mean, this was not let's sit next to each other in a car and perhaps touch each other over clothing. And when told no, nothing happened, as the charges were made. And I don't defend them if they're true at all. They're awful if they were true, with Roy Moore. But my point is a different point. Is James Levine a man-hater? The gay men who have molested or who have harassed males, do they hate males? The idea is preposterous. So why do men who harass women hate women? That idea is also preposterous. But it shows you the intellectual shallowness on the left is breathtaking. That's all I can say. It's breathtaking. They just throw out labels, and they do it in every single article. Misogyny, misogyny, misogyny. It's another, forgive my expression, rape of a term of evil that the left engages in. You don't support affirmative action, you're a racist. It's just endless. Misogyny. So if a gay man harasses males, he's not a male hater. But if a heterosexual man harasses females, he's a woman hater. This is only the college educated can believe such idiocy. It's because you become stupid in college, especially if you got a degree in the liberal arts and especially if you got an advanced degree. I say this almost every day, not only because I believe it, in fact, I know it, but not only because I know it, but because it needs to be stated. People need to understand what happens if you get a graduate degree. I mean, gender studies or women's studies would be the most obvious areas. But English and anthropology and sociology and the like, and many others as well. So just ask your friends who call the president and others misogynist. Are those who harass men, man-haters? Please let me know what they answer. 1-8-PRAGER-776. Hello, my friends. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Mark in Lake Mary, Florida. Hello, Mark of Lake Mary. Dennis Prager.
How are you, Dennis?
How am I? I'm wonderful, thank you.
Good. You had an experience very similar to mine with the server at the Trump Hotel. I was in a Chick-fil-A, actually in Orlando, after the election but before the inauguration, and I made some comment as I was ordering or whatever. I said something about Donald Trump. I remember what it was. And the cashier, who was an African-American woman, she looked at me and said, "Best boss I ever had." And I kind of looked puzzled, and she said, "I used to work in one of the casinos up in Atlantic City." And she said, "He came on the floor frequently. He knew lots of employees' names." She goes, "I don't think he knew my name." But she said, the pay was great, the atmosphere was wonderful, and he was a very nice man. So, very similar story.
Well, thank you for that. That's what I had heard as well from people who had met him. I've never met him. A lot of the things need to be fairly adjudicated in people's minds. I'll tell you, I don't think I ever said anything that caused quite as many negative reactions as when I said that after doing a lot of research, and I did a lot of research, it turns out that the president was not mocking the disability of the disabled New York Times reporter in that infamous case of his shaking his body. And I believe that. I think all concerned should take a lie detector test. I certainly would. About my belief about it, I don't know absolutely for certain, but all the evidence suggests that he was not mocking his disability, because that was not his disability, and we have videos of his making the same shaking motion, President Trump, when he was not president, mocking other people, all of whom were not disabled. Then the same with the misogyny argument. He's a misogynist because he made the groping comment. Well, I've already answered that. So the men who grope men, I assume, are man-haters. Well, look, the left has taken over everything. Leftism is the most dynamic religion of the last 100 years, as I have said on many, many occasions. More dynamic than Christianity, more dynamic even than Islam. It's been the most dynamic religion, and in fact, it is not only the dominant religion in our colleges and in our entertainment media and in our news media. It is the dominant religion in our religions. It has deeply influenced mainstream Protestantism, mainstream Judaism, and mainstream Catholicism. The Pope of the Catholic Church today is a man of the left. His theology is Catholic, and his value system is leftist. And that's true for the mainstream Protestant churches. It's true for the great majority of non-Orthodox Jewish denominations. That's the way it is. It's very powerful. I spoke on this yesterday here in New York, and then somebody got up and said, "Why is a great question? Why is the left so powerful? Why has it so influenced people?" And I said, because it's in accord in so many ways with human nature. Because it's feelings-based. Feelings are very powerful. Because people don't want liberty. They want to be taken care of. Did you know, folks? Let me leave you this hour with this thought. Liberty is not an instinct. It's a value. You are listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Well, everybody, hi, Dennis Prager here, the Ultimate Issues Hour, the third hour every Tuesday is about some great issue of life. That's right. I mean, how much can you be preoccupied just with the daily? Because life consists of both the daily and the eternal. The big questions, the big issues, which I happen to have always thought were the key things. I'm preoccupied with daily issues, too. I live in this world. But the big ones are big. That's why they're called Ultimate Issues. I'm Dennis Prager, third hour Tuesday. Hi, everybody. Well, as most of you know, I have been preoccupied to an unprecedented extent with preparing the Rational Bible, my explanation and commentary on the first 5 books of the Bible, in the hope that it will make millions of people aware of why it is the greatest book that has ever been written, and even have people flirt with the idea that perhaps even God is behind it, because it is so, it has no parallels in the world in which it came 3,000 years ago. So, periodically, I have dealt with difficult issues in the Bible that prevent a lot of people from taking it much more seriously. So, I'd like to do that today. Slavery. The question is posed all the time, completely understandably. Well, why didn't the Bible ban slavery? Completely understandable question. Well, as slavery is primarily discussed in the book of Exodus, and it is the book of Exodus that is the first of my 5 volumes, I would like to discuss slavery and answer the question, why didn't the Bible ban slavery? I have a lot of answers, all of which, or nearly all of which, will be new to most of you. But it is all there. I'm not making anything up, except, obviously, some theories that I have that I can't quote to you verbatim. I can quote to you the laws about slavery. But first, let me answer the question in the biggest macro way I can. Let us say the Bible, after all, I do believe, certainly with the first 5 books, as ultimately of divine origin. So, God can't stand slavery. Let's assume that that's true. It has to be true. God loves his children. We are all his children. So, why doesn't God just say, if you don't believe in God, why doesn't the Bible just say, thou shalt have no slaves? All right? So let me begin with the first part of an answer. The Bible is interested in making life better. It is not interested in utopia. And that is my view of life, and I got it from the Bible, especially these first 5 books. That's where I got it from. The best is the enemy of the better might be one way of providing a subtitle for biblical morality. Let us say the Bible had said, remember what we're talking about? We're talking about over 3,000 years ago. Do you understand how long ago that was? That's the late Bronze Age. All over the world, every society, people were sacrificing people to gods. They would be burning people as sacrifices to gods. That is the world into which the Bible entered. Okay? You must understand. Not only that, slavery was universal. By universal, I don't mean nearly universal. I mean universal. Every single society had slavery. It would be like banning travel. So the Bible, specifically the book of Exodus, can't stand slavery. And by the way, I'll come back to that utopian issue in a moment. It is very instructive where the laws of slavery appear. They appear right after the Ten Commandments. You have in Exodus 20, God gives Moses the Ten Commandments. Right after that, in Exodus 21, what you have is God summarizing in greater detail the Ten Commandments, expanding, not summarizing, expanding the Ten Commandments, with one exception. First, before restating the Ten Commandments in Exodus 21, what God does is give laws about slavery. Why would that be? Because the Israelites, the Hebrews, the Jews, had just left Egypt months before. So it is, as it were, the Bible, God wants to make it clear, yes, you can still have what is called slavery, but it will be nothing like what you had in Egypt. It's going to become a humanized institution. Now back to the bigger point. Let us say the Bible said, "Thou shalt have no slaves." What would have happened? Two things would have happened. Number one, nothing. It simply would have been ignored. Right? It would be as if there would have been a biblical injunction, give away everything you own. How many people, and there are people who believe that there are biblical injunctions about giving away everything you own, especially Christians reading the New Testament. They will point to a verse here and there. How many people give away everything they own? 0.5%? No, not even. What am I talking about? It's negligible. In other words, essentially no one. In other words, you can have a biblical injunction to feel good about yourself, but the question in life is not do you feel good about yourself? The question in life is do you do good? Had there been a biblical injunction 3,000 years ago, thou shalt have no slaves, nobody would have listened to it. It would have been ignored, and real slavery, bad stuff, would have just continued. So, what the Bible did was, okay, since slavery is ubiquitous, what we're going to do is we're going to give you so many laws to make it more humane that it's no longer going to be slavery as anyone understood it. That's the biblical view on slavery. We are going to change this institution so radically in a more humane way that it will be unrecognizable as such. It will be that different. I'll give you an example. For one thing, the Bible, when people ask you why did the Bible ban slavery, tell them, number one, that what was done to blacks in Africa in the transatlantic slave trade was banned by the Bible. Twice. Number one, the commandment of the Ten Commandments, do not steal. Do not steal was understood always, always. Number one, you may not steal a human being and sell them into slavery. It is first and foremost a ban on stealing people. There would have been no transatlantic slave trade if people simply obeyed, do not steal people. That is what was done to Africans. They were stolen. They were kidnapped. Number two, in case you didn't understand that that was a violation of do not steal, it states in Exodus, this book that I'm writing this commentary on, this explanation of, there is a specific law that if anyone kidnaps anyone, any race, any religion, anyone, and sells them, they are to be executed. Back in a moment.
Some kind of
Hello, my friends. Ultimate Issues Hour is the third hour every Tuesday. Today, the question is, why didn't the Bible ban slavery? I devote a lot of time to this because the book that is coming out in April, The Rational Bible, my explanation and commentary on the book of Exodus, biggest work of my life, deals a lot with slavery, the book of Exodus, not only in God liberating slaves, but in the laws there. And people dismiss the Bible because it allowed slavery, because they don't know what they're talking about. That's why. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. They don't know what they're talking about, but I'm not saying that as an insult. I didn't know what I was talking about either until many years ago when I started studying this in depth. And you realize the genius of the Bible. As I pointed out, had it banned it, two things would have occurred. Number one, nothing. It wouldn't have been listened to any more than if there had been a law, give away everything you own. Give it to the poor. Nothing would have happened. Instead, it says give 10%. Well, then something happened. The Bible wants the world to be better. It doesn't want to feel good about itself. People who say, why didn't it ban slavery? That is part of the very common human desire to feel good about yourself. Oh, look, I am for banning slavery 3,000 years ago. But it wouldn't have worked. Nothing would have happened. And the other is, most of the slavery that is allowed in the Bible, the vast majority, is not slavery as we know it, because the Hebrew word for slave and the Hebrew word for servant is identical. I could prove that to you, because it says that Moses is the servant of God. But it's the same word as slave. Nobody assumes he's the slave of God. The Hebrew word eved is the same for both. Bonded indenture is where you work off a debt by getting room and board, and only room and board, and you work off a debt. You know how many Americans came to the United States of America, or came to America before there was a United States of America? I'm talking about white Europeans who came to the United States to serve in bonded indenture. That's how they pay off their debts, and then they would establish a life as free people. That's exactly what most of the slavery is. You were not allowed to buy slaves. Kidnap slaves and sell them. That was banned twice in this very book, once in the Ten Commandments and once right after the Ten Commandments. Of any faith, of any religion, even a pagan, you couldn't you couldn't kidnap a pagan and sell him as a slave. So African slavery, the slavery that most Americans are aware of and think about when they say slavery, was completely banned. That there were Christians and Jews who didn't believe that the Bible banned such slavery means nothing. It means nothing. It means that they decided not to listen to their own Bible. That's not uncommon, in case you didn't know. So please understand that if you want to do good, you have to usually gradually improve an institution rather than ban it. I'll give you another example. It was true for the founding of the United States that occurred almost 3,000 years later. There would not have been a United States of America if the founders banned slavery. The South would not have joined the Union. The price of having the South join the Union was to allow slavery to continue there, no matter how much you oppose slavery. And if you believe that the formation of the United States was a moral good, then the compromise was worth making. Anyway, it wouldn't have ended slavery. The South would have continued slavery for as long as it wanted. Why didn't the United States ban slavery? You could ask the exact same question, because the price paid would have been terrible. Not the economic price, the moral price. And it wouldn't have ended slavery. All right? So these I can't expect you to remember everything that I'm saying. That's why it's being written. And you can pre-order the Rational Bible at Amazon, and I really ask you to do so. It's a life-changing work. I never said that about any of my other books. And I think the Happiness book has changed lives, but that's not how I've ever promoted it. The Torah did indeed, that is the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, did indeed ban the type of slavery that modern people think of when they think about slavery, kidnapping free human beings and selling them for use as slaves. All right? And in Exodus 21:16, the kidnapping of any person, Israelite, non-Israelite, for the purpose of enslavement, is a capital crime. You were put to death. So it didn't ban every form of slavery, but prohibited what became African slavery, just as an example. I'm going to take your calls. 1-8-PRAGER-776. I'll give you another example of an incredible law that you probably don't know of. There's a law in the same book. Well, I think it's in Deuteronomy, actually. The 5th book. You are not allowed to return a slave to its owner. Isn't that unbelievable? If a slave escapes, you can't return the slave. That was a pretty strong incentive to treat slaves decently, wasn't it? If a slave escapes, you are not allowed to return him. If you knock out a slave's tooth, if you hit him that hard that just one tooth falls out, he goes free. You kill your slave, you get killed. These are all biblical laws. Pretty amazing, no? And people don't know about this. They just don't know. 1-8-PRAGER-776. You are listening to the Dennis Prager Show, and we will, I'll take your calls. 877-243-7776. The Rational Bible is where this is will all appear as of April 2. You can pre-order it now at Amazon. You are listening to the Ultimate Issues Hour on the Dennis Prager Show. Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. This is the Ultimate Issues Hour. The third hour every Tuesday is devoted to some great issue. The great issue today is with regard to the Bible and slavery. The most common question I hear asked is, why didn't the Bible ban slavery? I can't repeat the whole answer, otherwise I'll just be doing exactly what I did the first half hour of this hour. So if you're just tuning in, catch what you can, but it's a good reason to catch as much as you can. This is a very big deal. I have answers to that question, and I have provided some of them now. So let me take your calls. And let's see. Well, anyway, somebody had, I guess he hung up. Somebody had an interesting challenge, because I said nobody would have listened to it. It would have been like a law, give all your money away to the poor. Virtually nobody would have listened to it, and how will the poor be served better if you say give 10% of your income to the poor, or if you say give all of your money away to the poor? Which would do more for the poor? See? It's like minimum wage. The question is one of the reasons that I have the values I have is that, a big reason is I take it from the Bible. I get my values from the Bible. And I realized very early on that you can do much more good if you ask, does it achieve good, than if you ask, does it sound good? It would have sounded great. No more slaves. Nothing would have happened. And vast numbers of people would never have gotten out of poverty, because vast numbers of people got out of poverty thanks to bonded indenture, working off your debts, being and not paid, just being given room and board, which is what obviously every slave is given. All right, let's. So somebody called in and said, "Well, so many people violate adultery. Why was there a law against adultery?" Well, first of all, a lot of people don't violate the law against adultery. Number two, a lot more than would have not violated the law against slavery. But in addition, you can't humanize adultery. It's either committed or not committed. And the same, whereas slavery is not either or. There is a way of making it more humanitarian. Okay, so let's go to. He is there. Here is here, Oklahoma City. Sorry, Terry.
Hello.
I didn't see. I thought you hung up. Hi.
No, hello. Yes, I was just. My point was your explanation about slavery and how you need to incrementally get rid of it. My point was that then all cultures commit adultery as well. So, what was the point of a law saying no adultery as opposed to maybe a little bit of adultery or whatever?
Well, you could say that then about any law, because everywhere in the world there's murder. So why have a law against murder?
Yes, but that's still the same thing as what you were saying about you could incrementally soften slavery. So then, how
would you incrementally soften adultery or murder?
Oh, I wouldn't. I think it's bad.
No. I know you do. I want to know, though, since I can tell you how you incrementally soften slavery, I want you to tell me how to incrementally soften adultery. If you can't, then there's no parallel.
Okay. I've like a lot of people have always been very disturbed by this thing. Is why didn't they just make it absolutely no slavery?
I know, so that's what I'm answering. It would not have worked. People would have suffered more had there been such a law.
So everybody would just have ignored it and gone on about their business.
Plus the other point that I made, vast numbers of people got out of poverty thanks to bonded indenture, which is a form of slavery. The way in which vast numbers of poor Europeans came to America. You work for no money, you get room and board, you pay off your debts, then you are a free person, you can work, you can eventually buy property, and that's how America was founded in large measure. Poor people coming here in that capacity. All right, everybody, Dennis Prager here. Dealing with the question of why didn't the Bible ban slavery? Just been spending years working on this in my commentary and explanation of the second book of the Bible. The first 5 books will be coming out over the course of the next few years, called the Rational Bible. We will not survive as America unless we return to reliance on the Bible for wisdom. It's as simple as that. We always did. I know this is news to those of you who went to college, probably never cracked open a Bible, and may have never even opened one, period. Biblical literacy was part of the American bloodstream. If you read any of the great novelists from the 19th century, Herman Melville, any of them, the constant references, it was assumed everybody knew what you were talking about when you made a reference to a biblical idea. I just saw a study, by the way, that the kids who are taught Bible have a 1-letter grade higher average than kids who, in any subject, than kids who do not study the Bible. I didn't even expect that. I'm just telling you if that's what motivates you. But the onslaught against it has been so great, not least of which has been, well, why didn't the Bible ban slavery? I've been answering that this hour, and it's at much greater length in my book, The Rational Bible, coming out in April. Okay, let's go to Bob in Minnetonka, Minnesota. Hello, Bob.
Hi, Dennis. The Hebrews, they did have slaves after they were freed from Egypt, right?
Right.
So why wouldn't they have learned from that experience?
They did. That's my whole point. Because there was nothing like what they had under Pharaoh. You couldn't even keep a slave more than 6 years. On the 7th year, he was free. It was bonded indenture.
Well, isn't bonded indenture different from slavery as
yes,
we know it?
Correct, and that's what they had.
Okay, well, I mean, it just seems like like with Spartacus, for instance, it wasn't like the idea wasn't there in our ancient history. I think at all times the idea of slavery had been brought forth and debated here and there, starting probably with
Greece was founded on slavery. It was assumed there was no moral problem with slavery in ancient Greek thought.
Well, I mean, I think that the Bible, it's own, has been mentioned in the Bible before. Anything that man touches, he wrecks, so to speak.
Right. So this is a way of improving it. This was a way. That is the reason that the only civilization on a civilization-wide basis that banned slavery was rooted in the Bible. It's not a coincidence. It didn't happen in the Muslim world. It didn't happen in China. It didn't happen in Japan. It didn't happen in the native populations of the world. It happened in what we call the Judeo-Christian world. And the only reason is this Bible. It made people aware that what was done to Africans was despicable. And, by the way, once again, banned, thoroughly and totally banned. Any Christian or Jew who defended African slavery, the kidnapping of people and shipping them into slavery, who was said that as a Bible believer they could defend it, did a terrible injustice to the Bible. Terrible. There is not a shred of allowance in the Hebrew Bible, upon which obviously the New Testament is based as well, for slavery as such, as what we had with regard to Africans. Okay, anyway, Bob, I appreciate it. And let's go to John in Greenwood, South Carolina. Hi.
Hi, Dennis. Did you realize that if it weren't for slavery, probably virtually all black Americans in the United States would not ever have been born? Has that ever dawned on you?
Well, it has dawned on me only in the sense that it doesn't tell me anything, because they would have been born. They would have been different blacks born in Africa.
Right, but there wouldn't be anywhere nearly the quantity, and the individuals that we know here in the United States most likely would not exist. Most likely.
Yeah, I agree. But so what? So they would have existed as different human beings born to different parents in Africa.
Well, they might not have. They might not have ever been born because conditions in the United States were much different than those in continental Africa. And Africa would not have supported that level of population.
I was taking you literally. I understand what you're saying. Okay, so you're saying, well, this is the argument that Keith Richburg, who's a black reporter, journalist for the Washington Post made years ago, Out of America, right? It's Out of America, yeah. It's a very important book. I should have him on again. He made the argument as a black American. He said, look, slavery was vile. It's an obvious truism. However, having been a correspondent for the Washington Post in Africa, all I kept thinking was how fortunate I was to be American. So I was the recipient of good fortune based on terrible fortune of my ancestors. Life is complex, but doesn't justify slavery in any way, obviously. Neither did he. But he was making the point, which I think John in South Carolina was doing. By the way, this is another great time for you to give to the Salvation Army. This is the Christmas season, and I'm a big fan of theirs. There's a banner for them up at DennisPrager.com. My book is The Rational Bible, and it's going to hopefully change a lot of lives, because we need people to take religion seriously again in America. I'm Dennis Prager. We continue on the Ultimate Issues Hour. Hi, everybody. You are listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Final segment of this edition of the Ultimate Issues Hour. This one is, why didn't the Bible ban slavery? And I've explained the larger answers, and I've given you example. I haven't given you even all the examples of how humanized the institution was, because the Bible understood if there was just a blanket law against it, nothing would have happened. But the first two things you need to know is that what was done to Africans was completely banned, completely, totally. To the extent that it was a capital crime in the book of Exodus, the one that I'm coming out with in April. The book of Exodus in chapter 21 bans the selling, the kidnapping and selling of anyone into slavery. Anyone. Israelite, non-Israelite, any color, any creed, even a pagan. It didn't matter. You cannot kidnap people to sell them. So those of you who say, well, why didn't they ban it? They did ban what was in fact done. It did ban it. And even that didn't fully work, obviously. It's very painful to me when I study the Bible and I realize that there were Bible-believing Jews and Christians who used the Bible to defend slavery. It is an astonishing thing. It shows you how hard it is to make people good. It is the most difficult endeavor in human species is to make good people. You would think it wouldn't be that hard. That's why I consider it so stupid to believe that people are basically good, that human nature is basically good. It's so hard to make good people. How did people run a slave ship? The floating torture chamber. What kind of human being? I marvel at the human inhumanity to human beings. So if you this is one of the many things that I grapple with, because I deal with all the tough issues. And hopefully you'll come to love the Bible and even start to think, well, maybe there is a God behind this extraordinary book. So, anyway, it's called The Rational Bible. It's out in April for Easter and Passover. You can pre-order it now. The Rational Bible by Dennis Prager at Amazon. The answers are there. The book is awesome. It is my personal vehicle to God. I find it more powerful than prayer even. Be that as it may, thank you for listening. I'm Dennis Prager.